The glass doors of Bennett Tower whispered shut behind him, sealing away the echo of polished voices and the sharp scent of leather-bound portfolios. Logan Bennett stepped out into the bustling heart of the city, his phone vibrating with yet another string of numbers that meant profit to him and ruin to someone else. He slipped it into his pocket without glancing at the screen. For years, he had trained himself to be unshaken, a fortress of calculation. Nothing broke through. Nothing could. The late afternoon sun slanted between skyscrapers, catching the gleam of his tailored suit as he strode toward the corner where his driver waited. Around him, the city swarmed with people who barely registered as human in his mind, merely moving parts in the machine of commerce. His mind was still turning over the deal he had just closed, a merger worth millions. Another victory to add to his silent empire. Then, as the light changed and the crowd surged forward across the crosswalk, something tugged at his attention. A stillness amid chaos. He turned his head. There, huddled on the sidewalk near the shadow of a billboard, sat a woman. Her clothes were threadbare, stained from weather and dirt. Her hair hung in a disheveled curtain across her face, but not enough to hide the sharp lines of exhaustion carved into her features. Beside her, the small children, twin girls no older than 3 or 4, clung to her arms. One whimpered softly, rubbing her eyes with tiny, grimy fists. The other watched the world with wide, weary eyes. Her lips pressed into a line as though she knew tears would be useless. Logan's stride faltered. Something in his chest shifted. A pang of recognition that cut through the armor he had built over years of ruthless living. That face older, worn, almost unrecognizable beneath its suffering, sparked a memory he had buried deep. High school corridors. The sound of laughter not directed at him, but at her. Olivia Carter. His throat tightened. It couldn't be. The Olivia Carter he remembered was radiant, the girl everyone noticed. She walked through the hallways with sunlight in her hair and confidence in her stride. She was the kind of girl who laughed at awkward boys who tripped over their own words, trying to impress her. Logan had been one of those boys, too clumsy, too invisible, too easy to ignore. She had belonged to a world he could only watch from the sidelines. And yet here she was, on the cold sidewalk, in rags, with 2 children pressed close to her as if they were the only warmth she had left in the world. The crowd flowed around them, indifferent. People passed with a quick glance, some muttering, others pretending not to see at all. Logan stood rooted in place, the sharp rhythm of the city muffled by the pounding in his ears. Her hand trembled as she stroked one daughter's hair. "Sweetheart, it's okay," she whispered, her voice cracking with a love that sounded both fierce and broken. "Someone will help us soon." The word struck him like a blow. For a moment, he considered walking on. He could summon his driver, slip into the leather backseat, and leave this scene behind as though it had never touched him. That was the Logan Bennett the world knew, the man who didn't bend, who didn't stop for weakness. But his feet refused to move. His heart, that silent machine he thought had rusted shut, thundered alive. It was Olivia, and nothing in his meticulously controlled life could have prepared him for the sight of her. Brought so low, the traffic light blinked, the city roared around him. But all Logan could see were the haunted eyes of his first love staring back at him. From the edge of ruin, suspense curled around the moment like fog. How had she fallen this far? Where was the bright, untouchable girl he remembered? And what would he do now that fate had set her in his path again? The answer was waiting, heavy and inevitable, in the silence between them. The night air carried the faint chill of early autumn, sharp enough to bite against the skin. But Logan Bennett barely felt it. He couldn't drag his eyes away from her. Olivia Carter. The name repeated in his mind like a half-forgotten melody, suddenly crashing back into tune. The last time he had seen her, she was standing in a blue dress at senior prom, smiling like the world belonged to her. Back then, Logan had watched from the shadows, clumsy and tongue-tied, while Jake Miller, golden boy, football captain, the one who never failed, twirled her across the dance floor. She had never looked back at Logan, not once. Yet tonight, in the glare of neon signs and the pitying glances of strangers, she sat on the sidewalk with hollow cheeks, holding 2 children against the storm of life. Something inside Logan fractured, the city pulsed around him, horns blaring, vendors calling out, footsteps echoing like a drumbeat of indifference, but none of it reached him. All he could hear was the quiet sob of the child clinging to Olivia's sleeve. He moved forward before he even realized it. His polished shoes clicked against the concrete, too loud, too sharp, like a foreign sound in this corner of despair. The woman stirred, sensing his presence. Slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes widened. Recognition flickered there, just for a second, before she looked away, as if ashamed for him to see her this way. "Olivia," Logan said, his voice rougher than he intended. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. The twins stirred uneasily. The younger one, Hazel, though he didn't yet know her name, buried her face in her mother's coat. The other child watched him curiously, her gaze steady and unblinking, far to knowing for her age. Finally, Olivia spoke, her tone low and hoarse. "Logan, what are you doing here?" The absurdity of her question nearly broke him. What was he doing here? He should have asked her that. She was supposed to be living some perfect life, far away from the struggles of ordinary people. She was supposed to be untouchable, just as she had always been. "What happened to you?" The words escaped him before he could temper them. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She hugged the children tighter, as though his question itself might snatch them from her. "It doesn't matter. We're fine. Please, go." But Logan saw everything in the details she couldn't hide. The bruised shadows under her eyes. The way her hands trembled as she stroked her daughter's hair. The way her back bent not just with exhaustion, but with years of carrying burdens she was never meant to bear. Fine? No. She was breaking. He crouched down, his expensive suit brushing against the grime of the sidewalk. A gesture that startled both Olivia and the girls. "You're not fine," he said, quieter now, steady, almost fierce. "And I'm not walking away." Her eyes filled with a storm of emotions, pride, shame, desperation. She shook her head, her tangled hair falling across her face. "Logan, don't. You don't understand. I can't accept." A sharp cough from one of the children cut her off. Logan looked down at the little girl, whose tiny hands clutched at her mother's coat. With frantic insistence, her chest rattled with each shallow breath. Hunger, illness, maybe both. Something snapped inside him then. A line drawn afar. "You and your daughters are coming with me," he said, his voice ironclad now. The tone of a man used to commanding boardrooms and bending empires to his will. Olivia's eyes widened. "No, I can't. I won't take no for an answer." The weight of his determination silenced her. She looked at him as though trying to find the ruthless boy she once dismissed. And instead she saw a man who had clawed his way to the top of the world, and was now reaching down to pull her from the ashes. Logan pulled out his phone, his movement swift, decisive. "Be here in 5 minutes," he ordered his driver, then slipped it back into his pocket. He extended his hand, palm open, unwavering. For a long moment, Olivia stared at it, her lips trembling. The twins clung tighter, watching her with wide, anxious eyes. The world seemed to hold its breath. Finally, with a shuddering exhale, she placed her hand in his. Her skin was cold, roughened by hardship, but the connection jolted through Logan like fire. He tightened his grip, steady and sure, as if anchoring her to something she had long since lost. Hope. Asterisk. The headlights of the sleek black car cut through the dusk as it pulled up to the curb. Logan scooped one of the girls into his arms, surprising even himself with the gentleness of his touch. The child stiffened at first, then sagged against his chest, too weary to resist. Olivia held the other, her eyes darting nervously between Logan and the glowing windows of the mansion that awaited them. As the car door shut behind them, silence filled the cabin. The children rested against their mother, their breathing uneven but calmer now. Logan's gaze shifted to Olivia, who stared out the window as though the streets held all the ghosts of her past. The question thundered in his mind. What had happened to her? He would find out. He would drag every secret into the light if he had to, and nothing, not her pride, not her fear, not the shadows of her past, would stop him. Asterisk. The car glided to a stop before a sprawling estate, its iron gates swinging open like the jaws of some silent beast. Floodlights traced golden patterns over manicured gardens and tall glass windows. To most, the mansion would look like paradise. To Olivia, clutching her children as though the night itself might swallow them, it felt like stepping into a different universe. Asterisk. She hesitated on the threshold, her feet rooted to the gravel driveway. The twins pressed close against her legs. Hazel, the more spirited one, buried her face into Olivia's skirt, overwhelmed by the sheer immensity of the house. Harper, quiet and watchful, tilted her head, her eyes darting across the mansion's glowing facade with a strange, thoughtful stillness. Asterisk. Logan noticed. He noticed everything. "Come inside," he said, his tone calm, but carrying the steel of command. He gestured toward the open doors, where Mrs. Harper, his longtime housekeeper, stood waiting, the older woman's face betrayed her shock. Logan never brought strangers home, let alone a woman and 2 children who looked like they had crawled out of the city's darkest alley. "Mr. Bennett," Mrs. Harper began. "Prepare a room for them," Logan interrupted, his voice clipped. "2 beds for the children and something comfortable for their mother. They'll be staying here." Olivia's head snapped toward him. "Logan, no. This is too much. I can't." "You can." He cut in, his gaze hardening. "And you will. You're not spending another night on the street. Not while I have the means to stop it." Her throat worked as though she wanted to argue, but the words never came. Instead, she gripped Hazel's hand tighter, the child's small fingers trembling against her palm. They crossed the threshold together. The interior of the mansion was a symphony of light and warmth. Chandeliers cascading golden fire, polished, floors gleaming, and the faint scent of cedar from the roaring fireplace in the grand living room. Olivia flinched as if the luxury itself accused her. She had grown so used to cold nights and empty stomachs that the sight of abundance felt cruel, almost unbearable. The twins, however, reacted differently. Hazel peeked out first, her eyes widening at the sheer size of the staircase that curled upward like a ribbon. She tugged at Olivia's sleeve, whispering, "Mama, is this a castle?" Harper didn't speak, but she drifted toward the fire, mesmerized by its glow, her thin frame soaking in the warmth like a starving flower. Logan watched both girls with a curious ache tightening in his chest. He had built empires, bent competitors to their knees, but never once had he considered what it meant to care for a child, to see innocence trembling against hunger. Something inside him shifted as Harper extended her small hands toward the flames, as if she already belonged there. Olivia sank onto the edge of a velvet sofa, her shoulders hunched, her body tense. Every part of her screamed that she didn't belong, that she would rather vanish into the night than sit beneath crystal chandeliers. Logan lowered himself into the armchair opposite her, the fire casting shadows across his sharp features. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly, her voice brittle, defensive. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his gaze locked onto hers. "Because I couldn't walk away. Not this time." The words seemed to strike something inside her, but she shook her head quickly, blinking hard. "You don't understand. Being near me, it will only bring you trouble." Suspense curled through the room, thick as smoke. Logan felt it, the way she deflected, the way she guarded herself like a fortress barely holding together. There was more, far more, to her story than abandoned dreams and poverty. He could see it in the flicker of fear behind her eyes, in the way she kept glancing toward the door as though expecting someone to follow her inside. Hazel climbed into her mother's lap, already half asleep, while Harper curled up near the fire, her eyes heavy but watchful. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, the twins looked safe, and yet Olivia looked more haunted than ever. Logan's mind raced. He remembered her as the confident girl who once laughed at his awkward attempts to win her attention. How could that Olivia, radiant, untouchable, have fallen into this? And what shadows still lingered over her now, making her afraid even in the safety of his home? He clenched his fists, the flames painting his knuckles gold. Whatever secret she carried, whatever demons stalked her past, Logan made a silent vow. He would uncover them all, and he would protect her, whether she wanted him to or not. The fire crackled. Outside, the city roared on, indifferent to the storm that had just entered Logan Bennett's life. But inside the mansion, the real battle of love, of power, of secrets long buried, was only beginning. Asterisk morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of Logan's dining room, soft and golden, falling across polished mahogany and crystal glassware. The scent of warm bread, eggs, and freshly brewed coffee hung in the air, but Olivia Carter sat rigid at the edge of her chair as though she were perched on a cliff. One breath away from falling, across the table, Logan watched her in silence. His crisp white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, softened his usual armor of power, but his eyes, sharp, unyielding, betrayed his determination. He hadn't closed a deal worth billions by being patient with secrets, and he knew Olivia carried more than she admitted. The twins were another story. Harper sat straight back beside her mother, biting into a piece of toast with slow, thoughtful precision, her wide eyes sweeping across every detail of the room. Hazel, restless and quick, giggled as she dipped her fingers into her orange juice, ignoring her spoon. Mrs. Harper, the housekeeper, had excused herself after setting the spread, leaving Logan alone with them exactly as he wanted. The clink of Harper's spoon echoed, small and delicate, but the silence between Logan and Olivia was heavy, taut as wire. Finally, he broke it. "Olivia." His voice was low but firm. "Last night, I brought you and your daughters here because I couldn't stand by. But this," he gestured to her frayed sweater, her trembling hands, the hollow shadows under her eyes, "didn't happen overnight. Something drove you to this point. I want to know what." Her gaze dropped to her lap, her fingers lacing and unlacing with nervous energy. "It's not a story I like to tell," she murmured. "I'm not here to judge you," he pressed. "I just want to understand and help." Olivia's lips quivered, her defenses wavering. She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength, then exhaled shakily. "After high school, I started dating Jake Miller. You remember him?" The name burned through Logan like acid. Jake, the boy who'd had everything, charm, looks, confidence, cruelty. Logan had hated him then, and hearing his name now sent old bitterness climb back to the surface. He forced a nod, his jaw tight. "We were inseparable," Olivia continued, her voice hollow, like she was reading from a painful script. "Or so I thought. After prom, a few months later, I found out I was pregnant." Logan felt the blood drain from his face. Pregnant. He gripped the edge of the table, steadying himself. "When I told Jake, I thought he'd stand by me. I thought we'd build a life together. But," her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, "he abandoned me, said he wasn't ready to be a father, that he had dreams, a future, and I was in the way. That was the last time I saw him." Her voice broke on the last word. Harper looked up from her toast, her small hand touching her mother's arm as if to anchor her. Hazel, too young to understand, continued playing with her juice, humming softly. Logan clenched his fists under the table. He had imagined Jake as arrogant, selfish. But this, leaving Olivia to fend for herself with twins, was a cruelty beyond even what he'd expected. He leaned closer, his voice simmering with restrained fury. "He just left you, with nothing." "With them?" Olivia nodded, her tears spilling now. "I was alone. My parents tried to help, but they had their own struggles. Jobs came and went. Bills piled up. The girls, they needed food, medicine. I did everything I could, but it was never enough. And eventually, I lost everything." Her words hung in the air, raw and jagged. Logan wanted to reach across the table, to take her hand, but something in her posture, the rigid way she held herself, the way her eyes darted away whenever he moved, stopped him. She wasn't telling him everything. He could feel it. "Olivia." His voice hardened, slicing through her sorrow. "That can't be the whole story. I know you, or at least I thought I did. You wouldn't have given up so easily. Something else happened." Her eyes flashed up to his, startled, almost panicked. For a moment, he saw something deeper flicker there. Fear, a shadow darker than poverty, heavier than abandonment. She opened her mouth, then shut it again, pressing her lips tightly as if the truth itself might kill her if she spoke. The tension in the room thickened. The twins had gone quiet now, sensing the storm between their mother and the man across from her. Hazel leaned against Olivia's side, while Harper's solemn gaze flicked between them, as though she understood more than she should. Logan leaned back, his mind racing. She was hiding something, maybe to protect the children, maybe to protect herself, but he wouldn't let it stay buried. Not when her eyes screamed of dangers yet untold. He softened his voice, though the steel never left it. "You don't have to protect me from the truth, Olivia. If there's more, I need to hear it. Because whatever shadow put you on that sidewalk, it's still haunting you now." Olivia's hands trembled violently. She shook her head once, fiercely. "Please, Logan, not now. Not in front of them." Suspense hung like a blade between them. Logan stared, his chest tight, his instincts honed from years of reading people in boardrooms. She wasn't just hiding shame, she was hiding danger. Asterisk and whatever it was, Logan silently vowed he would drag it into the light, even if it meant tearing apart the fragile trust she had given him. The fire in his chest roared hotter than ever. Jake Miller was only the beginning, and Logan knew, with bone-deep certainty, that this was far from the end of Olivia's story. The mansion had always been a fortress of silence. Logan Bennett lived there like a king in exile. The halls vast, the rooms immaculate, but empty of laughter, of warmth, of life. Yet, In a matter of hours, everything had changed. Now the air buzzed with sounds he had never heard within these walls. Hazel's bubbling giggles, as she chased her reflection across the marble floor. Harper's soft voice asking question after question about the books that lined his shelves. Olivia's gentle murmur trying and failing to hush them. It was chaos, messy and unpolished, but Logan found himself listening to it like a man who had lived long in silence. Terrified that the noise might stop, he stood in the doorway of his library, one hand resting against the carved oak frame, watching as Harper trailed her fingers along the spines of leather-bound volumes. She stopped at one, tugging it free with effort. The book was nearly half her size. Logan stepped forward quickly before it slipped from her grasp. "Careful," he said, steadying it in her small hands. "That one's older than I am." Harper looked up at him, wide-eyed, her voice quiet but clear. "Do you read all of them?" Logan glanced at the towering shelves, an empire of words he'd collected but never really touched. He hesitated. "Some, not as many as I should." Harper hugged the book to her chest, thoughtful. "I'd read all of them if I lived here." Her voice was solemn, full of a gravity that didn't belong to a child so young. Logan's chest tightened. There was something about her, the stillness in her eyes, the way she seemed older than her years. It unsettled him, yet drew him in. Meanwhile, Hazel had discovered the velvet drapes and was swinging herself back and forth, squealing with delight. Olivia swooped in, pulling her away gently, murmuring apologies. Logan shook his head. "Let her play. If the house falls apart, I can buy another one." Olivia froze, startled, her lips parting as though she wasn't sure whether he was serious. Then, for the first time since he brought her here, a faint, fleeting smile touched her face. That smile burned into Logan's mind like a brand, but as quickly as it came, it vanished. Olivia's eyes darted to the clock on the wall. She ushered her daughters toward the guest room, her shoulders tense, her every step weighed down by something unseen. Logan noticed. He noticed the way she lingered at the window that evening, peering into the darkened gardens as if expecting someone, or something, to appear later. When the girls finally fell asleep, Logan passed her room on his way to his office. Through the cracked door, he saw her sitting on the edge of the bed, head bowed, hands clasped tightly together, not in prayer, in fear. That was when the phone rang. The sound cut through the quiet halls like a blade. Olivia jolted upright, her hand flying to her mouth as if to stifle a cry. She glanced at the girls, still asleep, then snatched the phone from the nightstand. Logan lingered in the shadows, his instincts telling him not to move, not to reveal himself. Her voice dropped to a whisper, sharp with panic. "I told you not to call me here." "Not again." A pause. Her breathing quickened. "No, please. Don't. I can't give you anything. I don't have." She broke off, her voice cracking. "Leave us alone." "I said leave us alone." She ended the call, her hands trembling so violently the phone slipped to the floor. For a long moment, she sat frozen, staring at the device as if it might spring back to life and strangle her with its demands. Logan's jaw clenched. Whoever had been on the other end of that line wasn't just a ghost from her past. They were a threat. He stepped back silently, retreating to the shadows of his office. But his mind was already ablaze. Jake Miller. It had to be him. The coward who had abandoned her, now crawling back to torment her again. But what did he want? And what hold did he still have over her? Logan's reflection stared back at him from the glass of his office window. A man who had built his life on control, on bending the world to his will. And now, for the first time in years, he felt powerless, but not for long. He swore then, with a vow that scorched his very bones, that no one, not Jake, not anyone, would harm Olivia or the twins again. He would burn down the world before he let that happen. In the darkness of the mansion, Olivia sat trembling, whispering a prayer she didn't believe in. Logan sat in silence, plotting war, and somewhere, in the city's shadows, a man smiled into a phone, knowing his game had only just begun. Asterisk, the storm broke 3 nights later. Rain lashed against the towering windows of Logan's mansion, streaking down in silver sheets, drumming like war drums on the roof. Lightning carved jagged scars across the sky, illuminating the manicured grounds outside in ghostly flashes. The twins had fallen asleep hours ago, curled together like fragile sparrows in the safety of their new room. Olivia lingered in the hallway, her face pale, her body tense as though she could sense what was coming. Logan was in his study, pacing, The call Olivia had received still gnawed at him. She hadn't spoken of it since, brushing off his questions with evasions. But Logan knew better than anyone. Silence always meant secrets, and secrets meant danger. He was right. A knock shattered the storm's rhythm. Not a timid rap, but a pounding, urgent, violent. Logan's head snapped toward the door. His gut told him who it was before his feet carried him there. When he opened it, the rain-slicked figure standing on the porch made every muscle in his body coil tight with fury. Jake Miller. He hadn't changed much since high school, though the shine had dulled. His once boyish good looks were now carved into something harder, crueler. His eyes gleamed with arrogance, but beneath it lurked desperation. The kind of hunger that makes men dangerous. Well, Jake drawled, his grin wolfish. Logan Bennett, the mighty millionaire. Didn't expect to find you playing babysitter to my family. Logan's voice was ice. They're not your family. Jake stepped forward, rain dripping from his leather jacket, his presence filling the entryway like poison. Olivia and those kids are mine. You think you can just scoop them up and play hero? No, they belong to me, and I've come to take them back. Before Logan could speak, Olivia appeared at the top of the staircase, her face drained of all color. Her hand clutched the banister, knuckles white. Jake, no, please, you can't be here. The way she said it, the way her voice cracked not with anger, but with terror, told Logan everything he needed to know. Jake's grin widened. There she is, my sweet Olivia. Always running, always hiding. Thought you could escape me? Thought some rich suit could protect you. His eyes snapped to Logan, cold and venomous. You don't know what she owes me. You don't know the half of it. Logan stepped forward, his broad frame blocking the staircase. His voice rumbled with lethal calm. Then why don't you enlighten me? For a moment, the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Olivia shook her head, her lips trembling, but Jake's words cut through her silence. She never told you, did she? He sneered. That I gave her everything at first. Money, a roof, a chance, and she repaid me by ruining my life. She ran when things got hard. She left me broke, humiliated. And those girls? His voice dropped lower, crueler. One of them isn't even mine. She knows it. Olivia staggered back, her breath ragged. Stop it. Logan froze, his mind whirling. One of the twins, not Jake's. His eyes flicked to Olivia, demanding answers. But she couldn't meet his gaze. Tears welled, spilling freely down her face as though every word Jake spat was a blade reopening an old wound. Jake moved closer, his tone shifting from venom to mockery. She never told you how she begged me for help, how she let me control everything, her money, her choices, her life. And when I had no more use for her, I threw her out, because that's all she ever was. Useless. Asterisk, the fury that surged through Logan was unlike anything he had ever known. Years of ruthless business battles had taught him control, but this was different. This was primal, protective. You're done, Logan growled. You will not set foot in this house again. Jake laughed, a sound sharp and grating. Oh, I'll be back, with liars, with proof. I'll drag her through the courts and take those girls from her. You think your money can stop me? Just watch. He turned on his heel, rain swallowing him as he vanished into the night. The door slammed shut behind him, but the echo of his threats lingered like smoke. Logan turned slowly, his eyes locking onto Olivia. She stood trembling, her arms wrapped around herself, as if the confession Jake had nearly forced into the open had broken the last of her strength. Olivia, Logan said, his voice softer now, though laced with urgency. Is it true? What he said about the children? About one of them? Her lips parted, but no sound came. She sank onto the stairs, burying her face in her hands, sobs racking her body died at last. She whispered, broken and raw, there's more to the story than you know, Logan, so much more. And I've been running from it for years. Lightning flared, thunder roared, and Logan knew the moment of truth was finally closing in. The perfect image he built of Olivia shattered, replaced by something darker, something wounded. But beneath her brokenness, he saw it, a strength forged in suffering, a courage that had carried her this far, and he vowed, no matter what secrets she revealed next, he would not let her face them alone. Asterisk, the courthouse loomed like a cathedral of judgment, its stone pillars slick with rain from the night before. Reporters clustered at the steps, flashes of cameras lighting the gray morning as though the storm hadn't ended. The world had caught scent of scandal, a millionaire, a fallen woman, 2 children. and a man claiming ownership of them all. Inside, the air was thick with whispers and the rustle of papers. Olivia sat at the defendant's table, her hands trembling in her lap. She had dressed as best she could, a borrowed blouse, her hair brushed smooth, but nothing could hide the exhaustion carved into her face. Beside her, Harper and Hazel sat with a court-appointed guardian, their small frames lost in chairs too big for them. Harper clutched a worn book she'd borrowed from Logan's library, holding it like a shield. Hazel fidgeted restlessly, her eyes darting around the room with nervous curiosity. Logan stood behind Olivia, not as her lawyer, but as her anchor. His presence was thunderous, silent yet commanding. The man who once ruled boardrooms with ruthless efficiency now stood in defense of something greater than wealth. His fortune couldn't buy innocence, but it could buy protection, and he intended to wield it like a sword. Then came Jake. He entered with swagger, his cheap suit doing nothing to mask the rot beneath. His smile curled when he saw Olivia shrink back, when he saw the children's faces cloud with confusion. He thrived on that fear. "Your Honor," Jake's attorney began, his voice oily. "My client has come today to assert his rightful claim. These children are his by blood, and this woman," he gestured toward Olivia with a sneer, "has unfitly dragged them into squalor. We will prove she is incapable of providing for them." Logan's jaw tightened. His own lawyer leaned forward. "We request a DNA test to settle this matter once and for all." The judge, weary but firm, granted the request. The courtroom buzzed, whispers rippling like waves. Olivia's head bowed. Logan reached for her hand under the table, his grip steady, unyielding. She looked at him through a veil of tears, her lips forming a silent plea. "Don't hate me when you know." Days later, the results returned. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the findings. Jake leaned forward, smug certainty radiating from him. Olivia held her breath, her entire body trembling. Logan stood tall, though every nerve in his body screamed with anticipation. "Hazel Miller," the judge intoned, "is confirmed as the biological daughter of Jacob Miller." Jake smirked, triumph flashing in his eyes. But then the judge continued, "Harper Carter," a pause, deliberate, heavy, "is not the biological child of Jacob Miller. She is, however." The judge's gaze flicked briefly to Logan, a direct biological match to Logan Bennett. The words cracked through the courtroom like a thunderclap. Gasps erupted. The reporter surged forward. Jake's grin collapsed into stunned disbelief, his face contorting with rage. Olivia buried her face in her hands, sobbing openly now. And Logan, for the first time in years, felt the ground shift beneath him, not from power or loss, but from revelation. Harper, quiet little Harper, lifted her head from her book and looked straight at him, not with surprise, not with confusion, but with recognition, as though, deep down, she had always known. The judge's gavel struck, but the sound was drowned by the pounding of Logan's heart. He turned to Olivia, his voice raw, demanding answers. "When?" Her tears glistened in the light. "That night. Before Jake. One night. Logan, I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. And when I found out I was pregnant, Jake was already in the picture. It was easier to let him take the blame than to admit the truth. I didn't want to ruin your future." Her voice broke, and she clutched her chest. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought you'd hate me." Logan's throat constricted. Years of longing, years of regret, all crashing into this single moment. He knelt beside Harper, his hand trembling as he brushed her hair back. "You're mine," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "My daughter." Harper blinked, then leaned against him, her small arms curling around his neck. The dam inside Logan shattered. For once in his life, money, power, ruthlessness, none of it mattered. Only this child in his arms. Jake erupted, slamming his fist against the table. "This changes nothing. Hazel is still mine. Olivia is still mine." His voice cracked with desperation. "You can't take them from me." Logan rose slowly, Harper's hand clutched in his. His gaze cut through Jake like a blade. "They were never yours. Not Olivia, not Harper, not even Hazel. You abandoned them, and you lost every right to call yourself their father." The courtroom erupted in noise, the gavel pounding to restore order. But Logan no longer heard it. He was already planning. He would fight with every ounce of his fortune, every fragment of his will, to secure custody, to shield Olivia and both girls from Jake's poison forever. As they left the courtroom, Olivia walked beside him, Hazel in her arms, Harper at his side. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a fragile breath of hope. And Logan, with Harper's small hand gripping his own, knew the shocking truth was not an ending, but the beginning of something far greater. The ruthless millionaire had finally found something worth fighting for.